Session partner IAB Tech Lab in partnership with Pubmatic. Gold partner LogicServe Digital. Session partner Agraya. Knowledge partner Kanta. Today we have with us Mr. Anant Goenka, Executive Director of the Indian Express Group, in conversation with Ashwini Gangal, Executive Editor of Afaqs, in this inaugural session. I welcome you both. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. Hi, Anant. Lovely to be here and lovely to do this with you.
Wonderful to be talking to you. Big fan of Afaqs. I've been reading it since I was a teenager. Genuinely, I've been reading it since I was a teenager, so I'm very excited to be talking to you.
Oh, lovely. How lovely. Great. Okay, so I've been told we have 15 minutes and I'm going to dive right into my first question. Okay, Anant. Now, just to give you a bit of a context, okay, this is a preamble to my first question. I'm going to do a bit of a throwback to September 2019. Okay, this was on the DigiPub stage, if you recall. DigiPub is an Afaqs event. It's all about the business of web publishing. All right. And at the time, you had said that in reference to the web publishing space, of course, you said that we can't rely only on advertising for revenue and that we absolutely have to diversify our revenue streams. Now, cut to today, given everything that's transpired over the last 18 to 20 months, I want to ask you, Anant, hand on heart, how are you really de-risking the model and how are you productizing your content? Because you've been very vocal about investing in top quality content, high quality journalism. That's the content piece of the puzzle. What about the product part?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I stand by what I said. And of course, I wish we moved faster in exactly what you said, in productizing news and being able to, we have to be able to look at a situation where more than 40% of our digital revenues come from the reader. And that could be through gifting subscriptions, that could be through micropayments, that could be through enterprise sales. You go to a college and sell maybe 100 subscriptions in business schools. You can do package sales with with A2 milk. I mean, whatever. But we have to find a way to establish a direct relationship with the consumer, and we have to find a way to upsell habitual products. Upsell news with habitual products, or actually invest in creating a market and just kind of sell news. And we as an industry have been slow. I have been quite impressed and inspired, I must say, with the progress that the Hindu has been making in this space. But on the flip side, we have been doing what we have been doing for the last 10 years. We have just been doing a lot more of that, since that DigiPub event you're talking about, which is 2019, you said, right?
That's right.
So COVID happened since then.
Yeah.
You're bringing this up. I can just kind of steal this screen. Can I just kind of steal this screen? I'm sorry. I didn't expect to do this, but I just got some data in today. Can you all see my screen? Sorry, I'll just quickly show you. If you just see, this is like just sticking to our core business. This is the Indian Express Group in its entirety. This is page views. I mean, you just see what's happened. If you can see my cursor, I don't know how clear it's showing, and if it's not, I'll kind of be fast. But just look at the kind of bump that COVID gave news, right? And it's not just any news. I feel like COVID, I think COVID, the infodemic of COVID, the COVID-induced infodemic gave a lot of importance that audiences started bringing to credible news. I think that was a huge change that I felt happened. A huge change. It was a big movement that kind of happened. And a specific area, since we're talking, this is, I don't know the people who are Express, loyal readers here who probably remember that we have a very popular page on the newspaper called the Explained page. We kind of break news events down and kind of explain it in a, we get domain experts to explain the news in a very unbiased, we just take the best explainer journalism you can think of, but just kind of break it down and just kind of walk a first-time consumer of news as our audience, and we kind of explain what's happened. Any event, it could be a science-related event, it could be a political event, it could be a city event, whatever. Just look at this graph on our digital play. Just on the digital side, our explained traffic. This is page views. The user base would be maybe about a third of this, or maybe a little bit more than a third. But this is the kind of number. So I think we also got really. I mean, I'm not to give any excuses for why we haven't moved, but we were very, very preoccupied in all the transition that was happening in the company anyway with COVID. But very, very preoccupied with our core business, which was just traffic and advertising for that traffic, and making the most of the audience that we have and growing that audience exponentially. Today, Ashwini, we're doing about 200 million users a month in 6 languages across the world. That's one of the largest digital news footprints in the world, and we aren't the largest in India. So you can just imagine how big the kind of demand there is for authentic news. So this whole thing about that news is commoditized, etc., which it is. I think this COVID-induced infodemic has also created an opportunity for credible news organizations that have invested 50, 60, 70, 85, 90, 100 years doing journalism to really actually step out and stand out in the digital commoditized news space. And I think we have done a fairly, we've had a fair amount of growth in just that core business. And that is no excuse, but we need to future-proof, or we need to not future-proof, but we need to create a new revenue stream beyond just advertising. The advertising and audience revenue stream has been extremely fruitful for us in the last 2 years. More than we would have imagined. But that consumer revenue stream has to kicking in.
Sure. Yeah. So, Anant, just a follow-up question to that. There's a conflict I want you to address and talk about how we can possibly resolve this conflict, assuming you agree with me when I say it's a conflict. And here goes. Advertisers want depth. Advertisers want width. Okay, width of content. But the minute you have a paying user, that paying user or a subscriber of content wants depth. So, how does one go about resolving this conflict or living with it? What do you do?
Advertisers, I don't know whether you can say they want width versus depth. I think I think the argument for center of market news is beyond. I mean, you will be width. You can't. You have to be depth and width is what I think we eventually all realizing. The successful people who adapted. In the digital world have had both depth and width. Now you can say, I'm just giving an example, but you can say the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times is depth, it's not width. But if you look at the kind of the amount of content that they cover on digital versus the newspaper, it is of course is much broader. So I think and that's kind of where I feel we have to create that difference, because the width is for the top of the funnel. The width is to bring that 200 million audience that we kind of have, and that is and you're right. That is what advertisers want, and that's our solution to advertisers, is that we have 200 million users that come in. It is the productization of news which creates that 200 million users to stay on for 3 page views a session or 5 page views a session, whatever, 50% more page views per session than they did earlier. And if you productize news well enough, if you understand that 200 million audience well enough, that's when you get them to go deeper and deeper and deeper based on what their interests are. And then you're right, as you go deeper down the funnel, that's possibly where the user is paying, not the advertiser. And here's where the advertiser is paying. And this bit I think we've been quite decent at, or the industry is not. And I'm not saying Express only, but I think the industry has kind of figured this out. Not figured it out as much as the explosion of digital advertising has kind of helped the industry sustain this. But the industry is not going to get a lot of support from the advertiser to sustain beyond a point. Having said that, I must say, I'm not trying to plug Express. Please, for God's sake, don't think I'm doing that. But just as an example, because it's something that's close to home, so I can share. We publish this thing called the 3 Things Daily News Podcast. It's last I checked was possibly the most listened to English podcast in India. It's a daily news show, and the amount of and it's a small number compared to everything else that we do, but the amount of advertiser or whenever we have conversations with advertisers about things that we're doing and stuff, they love this. They want to talk about this as much as they want to talk about the width, because the width is now kind of, it's kind of, it's a well-oiled machine. But the disruption in the advertiser's mind, the kind of demand that the
but since we're on the subject of digital advertising, I want to just switch gears, Anant, to technology. Okay. Just how will Google's decision to phase out third-party cookies impact digital advertising? How will it impact programmatic media buying? How will it impact the end user and, of course, web publishers? What are the changes you already see happening? Now, I understand that the moment of truth will not be upon us until 2023, because that's really when this is going to happen. But still, we have enough time to prepare. So what should we do as an ecosystem by way of preparation till then? Because scale seems to be at odds with brand safety. Personalization seems to be at odds with data privacy. So talk about this piece of the puzzle, the ad tech and martech piece of it.
So I think you've perfectly identified the fault lines in the digital advertising evolution, and I think it's very exciting because the last time there was an economic setback in the world, if you look at 2008, it took 3 years for the entire advertising industry to come back to where they were in 2007, right? So it took 3 years for the industry to kind of bounce back. I think what's happened this time around with with COVID is that we have bounced back. I think in a year. I mean, if you look at the numbers last month compared to what they were 2 years ago, the same month 2 years ago, we're kind of almost there. And I'm not saying it's all obviously there has been shakedown, but I think largely because there's been some entrepreneurial spirit that's gone into digital advertising, we've been able to bounce back so fast. So exactly, I'm just going to the example you said, whether third-party cookies, I think that's one example where we don't know when that will actually happen, whether they keep kicking the can down the road from whatever I understand here. But, Apple, for instance, has suddenly just, overnight kind of came down with such stringent privacy norms. And, you saw the explosion really of several software companies, and I'm just saying names that I've read. I've never spoken to them, so I don't know pronouncing them right. But there's a company called Rokt, Yotpo, Clavio. These are all kind of I don't know, but I'm sure there are more. But these are kind of softwares that kind of came in and said, the e-commerce companies or the merchants that actually have been reasonably good about collecting their own first-party data in the last 3 to 4 years, they are working with that first-party data to upsell and to create more efficiency in their funnel management and in their ARPU management, right? So I think I'm just giving an example. I mean, if you look even more conventional companies, I mean, I'm just saying an example of, like, instance, the Trade Desk, or even if you talk to Apple, these guys are working so closely with such innovative programmatic ad formats, with audio streaming, with AVOD, with news publishers like us. And so I think there is a lot of entrepreneurial efforts that have gone into programmatic advertising through this disruption, through this demand for user privacy, through the regulatory demand for user privacy, through the audience demand for user privacy, and through these big, market changing events like third-party cookies kind of being kicked out, or Apple's privacy policy. So I think there's a lot of change that's kind of happened, and it's just so fast that you have seen these startups come and fill that space where the digital advertising growth, especially in India, is nowhere close. I mean, it's just exploding, right? I think we are 54,000 crores as an ad market this year. We expect in 2024 that digital advertising alone will be 54,000 crores. So I'm saying that's the kind of exponential growth that's coming, obviously largely driven by the big platforms and the monopolies, the Google and the Facebooks, but also by all the new, digital ad companies.
Yeah, of course. Now, first-party data does seem to be the linchpin upon which everything else rests. But I have to ask you that doesn't this spoil the user experience somewhere? I see a lot of sites already asking people to sign in before they've even sampled the content and decided whether it's of value to them or not. You're supposed to give your consent beforehand. Now, consent is obviously a good thing, but what happens to user experience, and is that a trade-off publishers have to live with, or the ecosystem has to live with? And there's a follow-up question to that also, Anant. Is the opted-in, signed-in consumer easier to monetize down the line and convert to pay, since we're on the subject of subscription as well?
Of course, that's I can consider our strategy. We've started by asking a whole bunch of users to just log in, just give me your email address, just tell me who you are, and I'm going to not spam you with that, but I'm hopefully going to create your experience, your interaction with Indian Express to be a little bit more pleasurable, more meaningful, more personalized. And hopefully so much so that that we become such a habit for you on the digital world that you pay for us. I think that's kind of what most guys, most successful wide news organizations that have successfully created a digital subscription revenue stream have done. Is that they've not jumped into the deep end. They've taken baby steps before they were able to kind of expand that audience base to where they are today. Whether it's NYT, Washpo, WSJ, Dagens Neuter, in fact, all of Eastern Europe and the Swedish newspapers have all done these kind of experiments successfully, I think. So I think that is I think the expectation that we have, and I think the best part about whether it's Apple, as nascent as iTunes, or whether it is an Amazon or a Netflix today or a Hotstar today, or even a Spotify, these people are really they have the pockets to invest in that user behavior, that user, in educating the user to say, boss, अगर कुछ, if you want something of quality, you'll pay for it. अगर अच्छा माल चाहिए तो कुछ देना पड़ेगा. So whether it's email address, whether it's money, you have to give something. That user, that expectation, I think that setting has come from the people with the big pockets, and I think it's really up to us now to be smart and ride that wave as news publishers.
Right. And just another thing before we move on to the next
just
question.
One thing I can just add, sorry, but we've seen all over the world, and I'm sure we'll see it in India as well, that the advertiser, whether it's a programmatic person or whether it is a direct advertising client, will give a premium for a logged in user. It's just established all over the world. And there's no doubt that that's what's going to happen in India as well, because it's somebody who's extremely involved in that. And if we look at all our advertisers on the Indian Express's digital platform, I would say 80% of them are premium. They're all talking premium.
But that's a bit paradoxical, isn't it? It's a logged in user who's subscribing, and then where does the advertiser fit in?
The advertiser fits in wherever the advertiser would fit in early on as well, right? I mean, it's just a more involved decision. So I know that logged in user likes to read Pratap Bhanu Mehta, or I know that logged in user likes...
I'm talking about the paying logged in user.
Yeah, the paid logged in user.
Oh, okay. So you're going to serve an ad to the paying consumer as well.
Absolutely, why not? And there'll be less ad units on the page, but the ad itself has to be it'll be much more relevant ad, and the advertiser knows that this is a great audience anyway. Whoever's advertising on, whether it's Indian Express or Times of India or India Today or Hindustan Times digitally, is advertising for a profile of audience. If they were advertising just for numbers, then there are 1,000 places they can go to. In fact, million places they can go to. There are more publishers today than readers, I feel. Okay. But whoever's coming to us because they want asking a premium, a paid reader of the Indian Express or of TOI or whatever is premium ka premium in a sense, and so the advertiser is going to respect that. And I think
is interesting indeed. Okay, fine. And going forward, do you feel the gap between big tech and the open web is going to increase with Google's phasing of third-party cookies? It's all very well to say first-party data, all of that, but are we just, increasing the height of the proverbial wall of this walled garden we love to criticize? What happens to the open web?
No, I actually think this open web is a bit of a misnomer in that it's really the web of 4 companies. It's not open. It's just so big that it looks open, but it's really just 4 companies that is controlling the entire web. Okay. So I think there'll be smaller walled gardens in this open web, and that is a demand of the consumer. That is not an impact of what you of what we have known as the open web. It is not. It is actually a consumer demand, because as even the best algo in the world is going to disappoint some user somewhere. Just look at the growth of, in India, how many times you and I get a Medium URL shared to us? It just to me shows that this concept of creating slices in this open web is a trend that's going to stay. Okay. It's not a trend that I think necessarily central market news organizations like Express that are doing 200 million users a month. I don't know if it's a trend that we can kind of sustainably sort of participate in, because it kind of plateaus beyond a point, right? Like all these things plateau, and if you want to be central market news, you've got to be, you have to be scale. Right. And so.
Okay. And, what's your take on cohort-based cluster-level aggregated targeting? Because, to my mind, it's so oxymoronish. For years, we've been talking about how digital marketing is down to the individual and it's precision-based. So how do we reconcile one with the other going forward? Because it's going to happen.
I think, we've heard our friends at Google and Facebook say this all the time. You're driving on the road, you see a billboard, that's a business. And, you kind of get a text message to everybody who lives in Colaba or in South Delhi that says there's a farmer's market, this weekend on your next door. I think this world is too big for us to have a sweeping statement. I think they'll both exist side by side, and that's how it should be.
Okay. Great. Now, Anant, in conclusion, to kind of end this chat, I want to ask you what you foretell for the media and marketing space in India. What are the 3 big changes that you see defining the industry over the next 18 to 20 months? Because we keep talking about the 20 months that have gone by. What's to come? What does Anant Goenka foretell?
Look, honestly, I think a lot of predictions have, are kind of useless, because, I feel a lot of what happens in the digital world, we are kind of we are subject to we're all over the world subject to what happens essentially in Silicon Valley, and we kind of react to that. And that's a sad truth of how the internet is kind of shaped up. But I think that, from our perspective, the one thing that's been very heartening, and like I was showing earlier in those charts that kind of coincidentally just kind of came in before we started talking, but there is an incredibly strong demand from consumers in India, in any and all languages, for credible, honest spaces for news, information, content. This idea that, this ABCD of the internet: astrology, Bollywood, cricket, devotion, this has all been now, I think, really it's been challenged and very well now established that, look, the audiences have evolved a lot from that. When I joined Express, it'll be 10 years in January. I was told ABCD if you want to do well in digital. I think that's completely been challenged. People want authentic domain authority. They want credible news. There is a fatigue in fake news. I see this everywhere. There's this whole question: if I can trust this item that's come on my phone, then this is really sad or this is really good or whatever. So I think that's one big trend which is important, that advertisers recognize, publishers recognize, the credibility that we hold very close to our hearts, and that we've earned very hard over 85 years. As an industry, more than 85 years, we have to be very possessive about it. And I think that will keep us in in good stead as we go forward. I think another big trend will be this idea of having a trustworthy relationship with your consumer. I think that establishing a direct relationship with the consumer, no media company in India ever has done. In fact, if you notice today, whichever media company has established a direct relationship with the consumer has got, whoever in the audience follows NASDAQ or follows US stocks, I've always noticed that the New York Times trades at a higher forward earnings multiple than Facebook. Every time I check, because the New York Times is not advertising revenue; it's more subscription revenue now, and that subscription and similar with Netflix. So these are companies that have established and have monetized that direct relationship, and that has a lot of that the market gives a lot of value to, and so there's a reason for that, I guess, which I think in India we have to kind of also do.
Yeah, someone even said it's a Netflixization of news and of content. But lastly, Anant, you're right. It's a time to relook absolutely everything. So, what's the Express take on news going forward? Are you relooking the way you fundamentally describe what news even entails anymore?
Yeah, I think news isn't who, what, where, when, why, how. It is, it's much more than that, and it is like, why does it matter to me is become extremely important in defining, in writing news and defining what news is. And that, as I said, that explained piece that I spoke to you about is exactly that. Is just breaking down why this particular legislation or this particular crime data point should matter to you, and or why it's relevant to you. Also, I think what's really interesting, and if I would love, if I get the opportunity, if we have the time, if I can ask the IMA guys to keep a video I kind of shared and ask them to kind of keep ready. I think what happens, and I have some relationship with a few brands who are friends I've known for a few years, and I think what we have tried to do now is to actually marry a brand's objectives with journalism, in a very credible, trustworthy, fascinating, and in a very exciting way. Um, there are in India, there are no matter how many, we've got 400 news channels in this country, right? No matter how many channels we have, very few of them invest in actually going to the street and actually getting the news. It's more opinion now, and so there are so many stories that are to be told still, and brands are evolving to being very, their marketing is very purpose driven nowadays. They all want to stand for something beyond their product. They all want to stand for a larger societal purpose. And so there's a lot of, I think, beauty in marrying solid, honest, credible, hardworking journalism with brand objectives. And if I can just ask IMAI, if they can kind of share that one. We did this thing called the Cancer Conversations. It's going to launch soon, and I'm very excited about it only because it's an example of something which is very heavy. You think cancer, you're like, I don't want to watch this. But we've constantly found ways of creating heavy subjects into very snackable, not exciting, but very I don't want to use the word entertaining, but very easy to digest ways, and tie that in with a brand. We worked with Aditya Birla Insurance for this particular series. I'll just show a small teaser if we can.
Sure.
IMAI or
बच्चे लोग कान बंद कर दो एक्चुअली I removed my left breast. Husband को पूछा मैंने, let's get that artificial thing done. तो उसने बोला नहीं ठीक है, एक से काम चला लेगा.
When I had to go for my classes in college, there were a lot of instances wherein the bus used to be in front of me and I couldn't run.
क्या रे झिंगुर, कैसा है तेरा? क्या इतना पतला हो गया? हाथ अगरबत्ती, पैर मोमबत्ती, क्या कर लिया अपना हाल?
Sometimes Google तो constipation को भी बता देता है कि तुम मरने वाले.
Cancer is not the only thing. Life is uncertain.
एक बारी, took me to a date where he ordered 1,000 rupees ice cream, and I was like, oh my god, ये उन कैंसर के लिए रुके हुए थे तुम.
I had a policy before my diagnosis. So I think I was lucky over there. Generally advise people that, as soon as the child is born, the parents should cover that child under a medical claim.
Wow.
Just an example of, this is like,
Yeah.
this is proper journalism. We sat with survivors. We wanted to do just a series, and then we said, what, the brand, has to explain why people should take insurance anyways, and it's something that everybody should have, and they just fit, beautifully. And if you just hear the stories, they are, I mean, they're hair raising, and they leave you with feel good. They leave you with a smile.
Fantastic. Yeah. On that note, Anant, I think we're out of time and I'm out of questions. I could really go on. Thank you so much for this amazing interview, and I hope this sets the tone for the event that's going to follow.
Thanks, Ashwini. Thank you so much, and everybody, very, very warm welcome to IMAI's 17Marketing Conclave, and looking forward to the next 3 days.
Thank you.
Thanks for such a delightful session. I would like to thank you both for joining Marketing Conclave.
Pleasure.
I would also like to thank our delegates and request them